So thank you, Mr. Badi, for the inspiring speech. And there's a lot of things which are actually happening, which UAE is doing to make things easy and for companies to operate here. So with this, we move to the next topic, which is a panel discussion on the global expansion, the marketplace opportunity and cross-border trade. So for this, we have four eminent panelists who will deliberate over this for the next 30 to 40 minutes. So the format what we will follow is, first we will ask the panelists to introduce themselves so that as the audience you know what the background is. Next there will be certain very generic questions which will each of them will actually give their opening views. And then again, being the convener, I will just take a shot at very specific questions and then we will open it up for audience. The only request is what I would say is, of course, they do not represent their company. So if you think that there is something, they may not be able to take a company view, but most of the views which they will be expressing is on an individual capacity. So that's the thing, disclaimer I just want to say before I move forward. So let me invite Mr. Dennis Lister, who is the VP of Cargo Commercial Department for Emirates SkyCargo. Then we have Mr. Ben Mclean, who is the head of key accounts, sales and e-commerce at DHL Express UAE. Welcome, Ben. Then we have Mr. Hisham Albahar, who is the group CEO of Posta Plus. And we have Mr. Selahaddin Burak Omeroglu, who is the Vice President of Cargo Sales, Middle East and South Asia, Turkish Cargo. Unfortunately, Mr. Omar actually could not make it because I got a message in the morning that he had some other personal commitments. Really sorry about that. So good morning, gentlemen. So before we start, if you can just we'll have a one round of introduction so that the audience know your background. So we'll start with you. Can you use this?
Good morning. My name is Ben Mclean. I work for DHL, obviously, and I head e-commerce for DHL here in the Emirates. I've been working for DHL for over 20 years, operations, commercial, and I've been here in the UAE for the last 12 years.
Thank you, Ben.
Good morning. Good morning, Dennis Lister from SkyCargo. I'm the commercial product development VP for SkyCargo. 2 years with Emirates. Prior to that, I was with the Red Yellows for about 20 years. I've managed to cross and accountable for all, I guess, e-commerce product development for SkyCargo.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hisham. I'm the CEO of Posta Plus. I've been working with Posta for the past 5 years. Prior to this, I was working for FedEx for the past 10 years. I looked after sales and operations. Prior to that, today, Posta looked after the whole region. We have MENA and also international offices across the world.
You have a problem with the mic. I cannot hear you.
I don't think the transfer.
Okay. I'll repeat myself then. So I was saying, I'm Hisham, CEO of Posta Plus. Look after the company. It's a region company for courier services. We cover this region, and beside that, also international offices across the world. Prior to that, I was working for FedEx for 10 years, and I was covering also the sales and operation departments.
Hello, Burak Omeroglu. I'm the VP for cargo sales for Turkish Cargo for Middle East and South Asia region. I've been working with Turkish Airlines for the last 10 years, and I'm here in the UAE for the last almost 3 years. Before here, I was responsible for Eastern Europe, based in Vienna. I'm basically responsible for all sales and operations of cargo in this region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So let's start with the panel for the opening view. So I will just put the questions across. So I want the panel to deliberate on these two questions, like how has the marketplace changed over the years, and what do do you think, how much has global expansion impacted the cross-border trade? So again, it's a very open-ended kind of thing. So we want to hear your opening views, and then we will get into very, very specific questions and before we open it up for the audience. So we'll start with you, Tan.
Yeah, I think obviously through technology, and the world's obviously getting smaller, so we've seen that evolution. Obviously with online now, if you look at what we try to do with DHL is to connect our customers globally. That's really what we've always tried to do. That's our primary focus. So I think naturally, as these marketplaces evolve and grow and expand into new markets, it's connecting sellers and buyers. So there's a lot more opportunity, and we've seen a lot of change through technology and efficiency. So there's a lot more opportunities now with in that space.
Okay. So Dennis, your views on it?
Sure, no problem. So I think a key thing for me is I think this gives some feedback, but I think we are all part of this sort of global trade. So if you look at the entire end-to-end supply chain, there's a lot of partners that are contributing to that, and you'll see partners come and go, new partners being introduced all the time. It's a shifting landscape, and I think for me, you see also a lot of, I think you mentioned this earlier, Cindy, the need and the tolerance of time and cost. And I think these things will continue to chip away at how do we do things faster and quicker for the consumer. And I think that whole drive now moving from sort of B2B environment to B2C, we see more and more pressure on partners to deliver faster and, I guess, cheaper.
Hisham, your views on it?
Yes, from my point of view, I think to be specific on this region, MENA has benefited a lot from the marketplace, especially when it comes to cross-border. The largest marketplace here offers around 8.9 million products, where companies like Amazon in US offers 550 million products. So that enables all the consumers here to be accessible to a range of products, and definitely that translates today why the cross-border is one of the highest in the world, where GCC specifically has 46% versus US 3 or 6% cross-border business. So definitely it has changed a lot and will continue to do on an exponential level. I think the next few years it will continue to grow on 16% YOY, and that can be translated a lot to see it from cross-border perspective.
E-commerce is one of the main growth opportunities in air cargo. So it brings a lot of challenges for airlines, like Turkish Airlines. This is a real challenge for us, but at the same time we see it as an opportunity to improve our services, because a lot of pressure is coming from the customers in order to provide a better service. Not only speed is the main thing we're already selling, but to be more visible, to provide a much better service is a real challenge and an opportunity for us to deliver what we're supposed to deliver in real. So we are thinking a lot, investing a lot in how to do things in a much better way, and this will help our industry to go to the next level, I believe.
Thank you, gentlemen. So I will do the first set of questions to the panel, very specific, before we open it up for the audience. So first thing, Ben, for you, I just wanted to know how has been DHL's journey on the marketplace, and another concern which has come most of the trust on the marketplace, because if sometimes buyers are not very clear, like if I buy from the marketplace, if the goods doesn't get delivered, what is my fallback option? Similarly, from a seller's point of view, so what is the incentive for the seller to actually list it on the marketplace rather than go solo? So if you can just deliberate on these two questions.
Yes, certainly. So I'll break that down into two parts. So if you look at a marketplace in its rawest form, it's what we've been doing for hundreds, if not thousands of years. We trade, and that's really what DHL has always been about over the last 50 years. It's been about enabling our customers to trade into new markets, whether it's online or offline. The core primary focus remains the same. So if you look at the evolution when we started this journey with the marketplaces, we help them expand into new markets, whether that's cross-border e-commerce or as their business evolved and they needed international sourcing or being able to help them connect between the distribution centres. That's really what our primary focus has been, and a lot of that's been around speed and efficiency. And we've seen that, obviously, we played a very important part to see that industry grow. And I think obviously as it evolves, you can see now in this region, it's a very exciting time. If you look at now with the new e-commerce free zones that are starting to open, we heard about what's happening here from a trade perspective. It creates a lot of opportunity for the industry as a whole. So from a seller's perspective, why is that interesting? Because all of a sudden now you've got the infrastructure with some fantastic airlines. You know, you've got some great international integrators here in the region as well. Fantastic connectivity. So it makes it a very exciting time to do business in the Middle East. Why, from DHL perspective, we think we're very well positioned to capture this demand. We've been in the region for over 40 years. We have a full aviation network, people on the ground, airside hubs. Why, from marketplace, is that important? Because effectively we can deliver their products next day. So if you look at the supply chain, we are the only physical touch point for the marketplace or the seller. So we are delivering that promise, and it's very, very important from a speed, cost, and a customer experience perspective that we're delivering that promise. The second thing why it's interesting for them as well is as we see this evolve, they're able to keep their products here and have a wider depth. So as Hisham mentioned there, if you imagine you have to go to market, you've got a lot of products in different location, effectively enable them to have more products on their landing page and be able to connect them into, you know, the GCC and further afield in 1, if not 2 days, whether it's with DHL delivering or connected into their own final mile. So we're seeing a lot of change there as well. The last part I want to touch on also is the sellers. So what happens in that space, you know, we're really focused on the SMEs, trying to connect them into new markets. We're very proud to say that we helped our customers deliver their orders to 210 different countries last year. So there's a lot of interest in the SMEs and who are on the marketplace, whether it be social or their own .com from the UAE. So it's a very, very exciting time. And the second part of the question, which I'll answer, I think what it does, I mean, obviously with a marketplace, they have standards, they obviously have huge traffic, so it makes it very interesting for these companies who do not want to expand, do not necessarily have the expertise, to be able to go into a marketplace and be able to attract new customers and enter new markets. And that's really what we've done. We've recently signed an agreement with Mclean, who will be talking tomorrow. And really what we're trying to do is connect those SMEs to different marketplaces around the world. So today they don't have the opportunity to expand their business, they don't necessarily have the investment, the understanding. So we, from a consultancy perspective, are able to help them in terms of entering into new markets from a transportation perspective, and then from a technology perspective, inventory management and things like that as well, cataloguing, product placement. Valenkium can fit in there. So we think that's a nice partnership. It builds on what our efforts have been over the last 2 years in this area, and we'll continue to focus on it. So, you know, in a nutshell, it's been a very important journey, a long journey. We've been very, very successful, and we hope to continue in the future.
Thank you, Ben. That was actually really a lot of positivity in what Marketplace has done for the business. So over to Dennis, I just want you to deliberate on typically SkyCargo has expanded globally. Only thing is, do you think that Marketplace has been a big enabler? Because if you look at the kind of business you are in, not many people are really aware that yes, Marketplace can actually take your business to the next level. So if you can deliberate on these things and then...
So it's a good question. I mean, we are an airline, and if you look at Emirates starting in 1985, with 3 aircraft leased, now we're at 260 plus aircraft. So you can see a rapid expansion in terms of just global trade, right? So I think when we talk about, in fact, I was at a conference a few weeks ago in Delhi talking about a similar topic, and you know, something that came out, someone mentioned something that cargo doesn't speak, right? So passengers speak. So if you have drama on an airplane, you know that passengers will have an issue, and that gets visibility very quickly. But cargo doesn't speak. But I think more and more so, I think we need to change that mindset, because I think cargo does speak somehow. Because I think you have a consumer or someone at the end of that supply chain that essentially wants that. And the sense of urgency is only getting bigger and the demand's getting bigger. So if you just look at Emirates, how we've expanded, Emirates SkyCargo has expanded since the 80s
to where we are today. Now we're moving roughly about 2.6 million tons a year, right? So significant volume. So if I look at my colleagues next to me, they can all tell you we're very close to the supply chain and global trade. You actually start figuring out how the global trade flows, whether it's from Asia feeding into the Middle East or from the US feeding into Asia via the Middle East. There's all these opportunities. So we see a massive upsurge in volume over that period of time. Marketplace, I think it's an important component. It's another component because there are multiple verticals. I mean, if you look at all the verticals we have at Emirates, and I guess in terms of our change, what we've done differently in the last few years, since I've been with Emirates, is we've actually introduced different verticals. So we've actually, and I think this is important for any company, because the thing is, you can stay status quo and just do what you do today, or do you try and look at what's going on in the market trend? I mean, I look at Posta Plus and some of the other guys, and I think those companies have evolved and resulted from a real market demand and need as we see this sort of introduction of globalization and people wanting stuff internationally, right? And you see this happening all over the world. No matter where you are, there's a desire for people to want stuff, whether you're sitting in Cambodia, of all places, and wanting something from the US, or you're sitting in Africa and wanting something from the UK. So we're starting to see a bigger demand for people wanting stuff, right, internationally. And that's that whole global store that people want to tap into and buy stuff from any different market. So I think the core stuff for us, the core volume for us is always going to be, I say cargo, but I think there's always a lot of challenges associated, and I think you touched on it as well, right? I mean, you talk about technology, you talk about, and I think an important part that we probably haven't touched on is regulatory. So if you look at customs, for example, that has become more and more apparent to me how difficult it is to actually move stuff on a B2C level. Okay? So particularly trying to get stuff to the consumer, i.e. you order something from the US, to try and get it from the US all the way to Dubai, delivered to your door for, I don't know, $15 or so, that is a challenge, right? And I think we really need to, as an industry, need to take a hard look at that. But as Emirates, the way we're addressing this is, we're grabbing it by the horns, right? And we're putting a lot of effort into it. I have some of my colleagues sitting around the table over here, so you can talk to them too, but I can tell you now, the way we address that is, and I think everyone needs to do this, right, is really invest is important, invest in the right thing. Infrastructure is key. I can tell you now, for example, if you look at our farmer flows, we have spent more than $200 million in our farmer facilities. You have to invest in the right niche and the right market, because if you don't do that, you'll be left behind. So I think there's a whole combination of things that come into play, and it just takes time to work through those. And I would challenge everyone that's getting into this e-commerce space, be prepared to work on 8 or 9 or 10 different things and fail on 8 or 9 of those things, because that's the only way you're going to learn. We have learned a lot in the last 2 years. So at SkyCargo, we have embraced e-commerce. We have started something, but more internally for our company. And I can tell you it works very well, but it's been hard work to get to the level where we are today. And a lot of man hours, a lot of blood and sweat and tears, but you get there in the end. But I do think this e-commerce phenomenon is hitting us, and per your point, the Middle East is growing phenomenally. Is it the largest e-commerce market in the world? Absolutely not. I think we're basically at the starting gate with this guy, and you're going to see e-commerce now just launch. Dubai's not even that big in terms of the market. Your biggest markets are feeding into GCC is obviously Saudi Arabia. We all kind of know that. So how do we work through some of those infrastructure challenges? How do we address some of the regulatory challenges and the technology challenges? I think those are the main things. And those things we're addressing at Emirates SkyCargo as well.
Thank you. Now we move on to Hisham. So essentially, I want you to elaborate on what has been Posta Plus's experience. And again, it's the second question, which I is slightly touchy, is about what about ethics in marketplace, because we hear a lot about this. So if you can just throw some light on that before we get some further questions from the audience.
Just to add on what the gentleman said here, I think still the market has a lot to grow. Today, e-commerce is 1.6% from the total retail market, which can tell us a lot about the amount of opportunity out there. Posta Plus, beside the integrator, just as a disclaimer, started focusing a lot on cross-border back in 2012, we recognized that there's a gap, which is pretty much the cash on delivery. So we've adapted quickly into that, and we've started introducing cash on delivery across borders. And trust me, we've learned a lot from there on the challenges that has came across. And we've managed to come up with solutions towards these challenges. And one of those is, when you do want to ship a package, you need to worry about the cost. And let's make it very clear, the whole cost, the landing cost of customs clearance, beside the shipping itself. So the consumer, at the end of the day, wants to buy something. He needs to know how much he's going to pay from the get-go. Even when it comes to the e-commerce platforms, they need to be aware of what are the charges, so whether they want to absorb it or they want to transfer it to their clients. So the whole idea is, what Posta Plus did, is we were one of the very early adopters to come in and say, these are the countries that you're shipping to, those are the whole charges they need to worry about. So the customer know from the get-go how much it's going to charge. The next challenge we've also came across is sending I wouldn't say it in extraordinary items, but when you talk about perfumes, usually it's considered as a dangerous goods. So to a certain extent, it was, from a traditional point of view, it was expensive. So we had to come with solutions to propose to our clients to find ways to make it more convenient, to provide them with a solution that is competitive in terms of price and also competitive in terms of service. So those are a few of the things that we've introduced when we got into cross-border. Now, when I want to touch base on the ethics part, it's a broad subject, but just to tap into the key one that I've seen a lot in our industry, specifically on e-commerce, it's pretty much a fraud in different shapes and different activities. We used to get shipments that we're delivering where on the picture it looks something, but when you want to actually deliver it to the end consumer, it looks something totally different. And it's important for us as courier companies to contribute and to participate in this to ensure that consumers are not impacted by this, because it has a ripple effect. On the other cases, you would see some sellers keep on changing their names just to not be exposed to their items. So we had to go back and understand certain patterns and see who are a potential fraud. Last year itself, Posta Plus has managed to shut down $2 million worth of business in terms of this type of customers. And today we are working very closely with the marketplace platforms to ensure that they push away all those sellers, because at the end of the day, we understand consumers in our region specifically are building trust. Our culture is primarily founded on trust. So we need to ensure that the consumer trust the platform they're buying from. I'm quite also happy to see companies like SGS today are developing a product that authenticating the websites is giving them certificates in order for them to say this website is certified and for consumers to trust buying from. So I think it's very important, and as I said in the end, courier companies has a big role to play, and I hope we will continue to do so in the future.
Thank you. So next we move you to Burak. Again, you are in a similar industry. So again, Turkish cargo. Again, not many people have heard about e-commerce being used. So how has been your journey, and what are the kind of initiatives, and how has actually e-commerce helped you? Because I see that you have been expanding quite a bit globally. So how have you leveraged the power of e-commerce and reaching out to the customers?
For the moment, I can say that we are almost in the beginning of this new business model. Mainly, our growth driver comes from Asia at the moment. We have huge lots coming out of Asia. What we are doing right now is to try to increase our collaboration within the industry and with other stakeholders. We recently started a new company to step into door-to-door delivery business. So the main thing what we are doing is to increase and improve our partnerships to provide a much better service for the needs of the e-commerce business. We are in talks with Turkish e-commerce players, which are still fairly small on a global basis, but which has also potential and opportunity to grow with the power of Turkish Airlines as well. We just recently moved into one of the biggest airports in the world, which will be one of the main logistics hubs in the coming future. A lot of forwarders, a lot of industry stakeholders, a lot of integrators are investing in this new hub. So these are all opportunities for us to grow in this business model as well. The main thing is, as I said, collaboration. We need to integrate much better with our partners, and we are investing a lot in this. Plus, we are investing a lot in technology. We are trying to be much more visible. We are trying to be much more traceable. These are the things that we are mostly focusing on currently.
Thank you so much. With this, I will open it up for the audience for questions. Yeah, can we have the mic there, please?
Hello, that's better. Sean Bradley from Freightworks. Just a question on security. How do you see security coming into play with the increase in e-com, the speed, all the other things that you've mentioned, and the ever-increasing issues with security in general, and the geopolitical situation we're currently facing?
Yeah, anyone if you can.
Okay, so a very good question. I think this thing has become, I think it becomes more apparent as we move into the B2C space. I mean, you touched on the point earlier anyway. So I think from an airline standpoint, and also I guess from a pure e-commerce standpoint, and more omni-channels marketplace coming into light, I think we have to take this extremely seriously. So I don't think we should wait. So if you look at the entire supply chain, I don't think we should wait for everything to arrive at destination before we try and deal with compliance and security. I think it's a whole, how do we look at the whole end-to-end supply chain? And I think it starts right in the beginning, from the point where we're looking at compliance. And from an Emirates standpoint, that's essential for us, right? Because we're carrying passengers on the plane, even flying the freighters. There's a huge risk and responsibility for moving one parcel or one bit of freight across the world. So we take it extremely seriously. I think it's a great point. I think we have to do more on the front, and you see more and more, a lot more regulation coming in. So, you know, from the point where the shipper has the right to actually ship something from the US into Dubai, to the point where something is transiting through Dubai. In Emirates, we do screen everything, as you know, as any other airline. Everything is screened at origin and destination, through the transit hub, the whole lot. I think it even needs to be stepped up even more, and I think it doesn't need to necessarily just rest with the airline. I think the responsibility needs to rest with all the partners, including those guys that are sitting maybe in the US that happen to do fulfillment. And I even look at the big global e-commerce partners. I think they have a responsibility too. They cannot just allow anyone in the world to be ordering stuff from A to Z, knowing very well there's risk in the stuff we send. So I think that will, to your point, I think that will certainly ramp up, and I think we have to start addressing, and I think we can do a lot with data, and I think we start seeing more and more of that happening, particularly with ACI coming in and with the use of the FHL message and data feeding in prior to the shipment being dispatched. So we want to catch the stuff prior to it actually leaving the airport. I think that's fundamentally important. So I think we have a process, and there are systems today that we use as an airline, and I'm sure every integrator uses this as well. It's locking those down. And I think we all even Freightworks has a responsibility. I think everyone has responsibility. But it's an excellent point, and this is something that will only increase, and I think there's a greater demand for better security and compliance. So it's about people and the stuff we move, i.e. is this shipper on some sort of list, a blacklist or anything? And secondly, the stuff that we're sending into country, particularly the Middle East, there's a lot of restricted and prohibited items. So I think if you take those two things off with the use of technology, equipment, infrastructure, I think we have a good start. But I think definitely a big topic going forward, and can only really be supported by good technology.
I'd just like to add to that as well. So from an express perspective, we obviously are working with the customer at the start. So Emirates, for example, was a partner of ours. So we need to make sure that we get that right before we hand that shipment over, say, to Emirates to move it for DHL. So how do we do that? It's all around the onboarding. So look at the customer's website, how they actually receive information, how the customer checks out. So from a compliance perspective, naming convention, so we follow the UN sanction list and parties. We'll look at the type of products they will have on their site. We'll understand that they have the right people, they're equipped from a systems perspective, skills, training, to be able to process those shipments. So an example, big challenge we face here in the UAE currently today is someone may be moving perfumes as an example, but they don't have anyone that's dangerous goods trained. So if they was to receive an audit and someone come in to look what they're doing, they're not equipped, they're not aware. So they need to make sure that they conduct the right training for their people and have the right expertise. The other part of that we do is throughout the onboarding we will give expertise to the customer, tell them what they should be doing and guide them, but ultimately it is their responsibility. If we feel they can't meet these standards, we will not take their business. In the event we work together and we then start to receive orders, we will do the screening, we will check all of those, and we'll make sure before we hand them on to our partners or through our own airlines that we've done all those necessary checks. But I think it's very, very important. The first step comes from the seller themselves, secondly from the integrators, and then obviously there's a third check with the airlines as well. But it's an area that I think all of us could do a lot better.
Okay, thank you. So any other question from the audience?
I have a question for the panel. Do you think cross-border will become an imperative now? I mean, the earlier supposition was that smaller markets might not be able to get into a growing business within the territory, and they would like to go cross-border. But I'm seeing it happening everywhere. The companies out of India which are going into Indonesia, the companies out of US which are going into Latin America. Will cross-border be an imperative of any e-commerce business in the years to come?
Look, my view from here in the UAE is that e-commerce is not new, and it's obviously a great opportunity for us here. But if I take, for example, Saudi Arabia, for every one export that we see, there's 9 coming in, and it's growing. So our estimations by the end of this year will be 1 to 20. And a lot of that trade is happening from other markets outside the GCC. So really what we're trying to do is educate the sellers to say, look, yes, there's a big opportunity here within the GCC, but if you don't start looking further afield, you will see that other people will end up taking that opportunity because they have been for many years. They just don't necessarily see it. So we are riding a wave now, we're seeing that explosion, but people need to equip themselves and really focus on cross-border trade. And as I mentioned earlier, DHL has been able to connect our customers to 210 different countries. So we see it will continue, but obviously the big marketplaces, as they evolve, as they grow, they will then start to warehouse in local markets, they will provide services on the ground. That's an evolution. But a lot of companies are not able to do that. They don't have the infrastructure, they don't have the size. So in order to continue to grow, cross-border e-commerce will remain, and it will just become bigger and bigger.
Thank you.
Just to add also on Ben, spot on when it comes to prepaid, when it comes to cash on delivery, I think could be the challenge. You need to worry about what could be the successful delivery for those players. So they have to worry about the double cost of shipping the shipment not being delivered, and then have to take care of the cost as well when sending it back. So that raises a question. What we're trying to do right now is trying to work closely with those customers to educate them how to approach certain markets where we have experience in, and the way I see it, yes, there will be definitely an expansion. We know it's a fragmented market when it comes to primarily the market share is dominated by Saudi and UAE, but the rest of the countries have a big potential, and I see this growing. There's a lot of countries across the GCC are growing exponentially, and also the rest of MENA.
So if I can just add to that, I think it's a great challenge. I think it's exciting for us. I think it's exciting for me to see that we have the ability to get anything to anyone in the world, essentially, right? And I think it will open, and I mentioned this point earlier, you will see new companies start up as a result of this. And if you just look at Africa or the Middle East or GCC, which we've touched on, there is this bigger demand and bigger need for people wanting to get stuff from anywhere in the world. You know, whether you have a cooking board or something in Ireland or something that you want to get to some guy in Mauritius because he fancies that, he's into that sort of thing. You find more and more people, as we do become more global, people are actually wanting some of that. And you can see the shift from the east to the west, and how people are now moving stuff from west to east again. There's a whole shift of stuff around the world because we're international. If you go anywhere in the world, you go to any office or any corporation, you're going to see such a diversity of people. And I think that just makes me aware that you're shifting stuff around the world. It's about culture, about people, and connecting people. So I think it's so much more than just a bit of cargo or parcel. I think it's about connecting people, and people want to be part of that. And I think that's essential. So to your point, I think we'll just continue to grow. And we have to facilitate that. I just look at the four of us, but I'm sure there's a lot more people around the table here that are today thinking of things that they want to do to be part of that. And let me tell you, get on the bike, start working on it and do it, but it's going to cost you time and money. And you will fail, for sure, but over time you'll be successful.
Thank you. My name is Prakash Rao. I'm from Landmark Group. My question is to the Honorable Minister sitting on my table. Sir, Mr. Badir, my question is for you. Am I audible now?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm from the Landmark Group. We are local retailers of this region. So my question to you as a representative of the government is the UAE government looking at policies and tariffs and other governmental regulations